Chapter 50 Disintegrate. By the time the boys were arriving back in London, Dr. Robert D. was finalizing his work on the new solarium material. He had developed an optimum method to activate it and generate field strengths more powerful than ever seen before. These fields had allowed him to manipulate time and space and move matter in both directions using his new field equations. Now was the time to document everything to date before developing new hypotheses and running a host of new experiments. Based on his successful experiments with time travel, he had become convinced that teleportation would be possible. It was essentially the same process, but rather than manipulating time whilst remaining at a single location, you would manipulate the space whilst time was left unaffected. The science of teleportation had been discussed for over a century. Nikola Tesla had talked about it in 1908, and Tesla was a very clever man. But what Tesla was always short of was energy. Energy was always required in these field manipulation problems. The solarium would provide Dr. Robert with what had always eluded Tesla. The world, or perhaps more importantly now, the universe was at his disposal. What was possible was his next job. The day after his documentation was finished, he started work on the teleportation problem. He was convinced he would nail it sooner rather than later, and he was not wrong. Less than 36 hours after starting, he had teleported an apple from one side of the lab to the other. Within 3 days from one side of the building to the other, it had become stuck half and half out of a wall. But there are always teething problems, he had thought to himself. What he needed was a teleportation viewer. Something that would allow the user to see where they were going, to prevent awful, or even lethal, combinations of matter that would inevitably happen with blind teleporting. This had been a harder problem to solve, but it was a defined problem, and this is always half the battle. When you do not know what the problem is that you are facing, you can never hope to solve it. He called on more practical engineering members of the Corona laboratory, and soon he had a concept. It looked like a mirror on a stand, but this mirror had no reflective surface, simply a suggestion of something being there. They called it a viewport. They'd had to develop a coordinate system to describe space in the 3 dimensions. They had chosen the Cartesian system, as this allowed a point in space to be identified uniquely. The data was entered via a simple keypad and allowed the viewport to be focused at the chosen point. The grand idea was, once the destination was clear, or a coordinate had been established that was clear, the port could be used and the traveler instantly transported. A few days later, when it first worked, it was a revelation. Dr. Robert was able to see inside Sebastian's office in Solars Tower in London. Sebastian was on the phone talking to him, and he could clearly be seen. All Sebastian saw was a subtle warping where the viewport was looking from. A mild distortion that, if you didn't know what to look for it, you may easily overlook it. At Sebastian's instruction, Dr. Robert threw a screwdriver from his side, and instantly it landed on the floor in front of him. The opportunities were endless. Nothing, anywhere, was now unavailable to Sepulchre. They would be free to do what they wanted, whenever and wherever they chose. "Thank you, Dr. Robert. Your work has been tireless and as exemplary as always," said Sebastian into the handset. "Thank you, sir. I am very excited about what we have achieved," replied Dr. Robert. "You should be," admitted Sebastian. "Continue your work. I will call you soon to follow up. Goodbye for now." "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir," said Dr. Robert before hanging up. As Sebastian sat there, happy with their progress, the phone rang. "Yes. Mr. Burke on line 2 for you, sir," replied his PA. "Thank you, put him through." "Hello, Barnaby, how are you?" "Sir, we have a problem. The 2 spies, I only know of them as G and B, have evaded me. I am on my way to London." "Oh, Barnaby, it is a good job you called me now rather than 20 minutes ago. My feelings would have been somewhat different, but for now just get back here. We will sort everything out when you arrive," said Sebastian. "Yes, sir, thank you, sir," said Barnaby as the phone went dead. Once more, fortunate timing had saved Barnaby's bacon. He only needed now to find these annoying spies and his life would be much easier.